We will begin scene 2. We are introduced to Rose and Sybil. Sybil is Rose's maid. Rose is making a garland for Lacey. Here sit thou down upon this flowery bank and make a garland for thy Lacey's head. So she is addressing herself. And here she says that let me sit down on this flowery bank. We learn that the Lord Admiral's men, they had among stage props 2 mossy banks. So they definitely used that stage prop here for this scene. These pinks, these roses and these violets, these blushing gilly flowers, these marigolds, the fair embroidery of his coronet carry not half such beauty in their cheeks as the sweet countenance of my Lacey doth. So all these flowers, they do not have as much beauty as the head of Lacey has. So she is admiring Lacey. O my most unkind father, O my stars, why lowered you so at my nativity to make me love, yet live robbed of my love? She is complaining against her luck, that the stars which were in the sky during her birth, lower means to be angry or to look sullen. Why did you look sullen? Why were you angry upon me at my birth, so that you made me love, and yet you robbed me of my love? That is, the belief was that the stars were responsible for the course of life of a person. So love was in her luck, but in her fortune, but she could not be united with a lover. Here as a thief am I imprisoned for my dear Lacey's sake within those walls which by my father's cost were builded up for better purposes. Here must I languish for him that doth as much lament I know mine absence, as for him I pine in woe. So she says that I am bound up here, like a thief I am imprisoned. So Otley removed his daughter from London to Old Ford, a place a little far from London, and there were high walls, and she was like in a prison because she could not go out. She was heavily guarded by his father because he wanted to prevent her from meeting Lacey. And she says that I am languishing him for Lacey, and I am sure that likewise he is also pining for me. He is also suffering from my absence. Sybil is drawn as a character like an intelligent maidservant, witty. Good morrow, young mistress, I am sure you make that garland for me, against I shall be lady of the harvest. She jokes that I am sure you are making the garland for me. The lady of the harvest, that is during the harvesting period, there would be a festival where a girl would be chosen as the harvest queen, and she would be garlanded with fruits and flowers. So Sybil jokes that I am sure you are making the garland because you want me to be the harvest queen. She knows full well that she is making it for Lacey. Sybil, what news at London? None but good. So basically Rose wants to know any news or any information about Lacey, but Sybil will tell her about all other characters than Lacey. So she says, my Lord Mayor your father and my Master Philpot your uncle and Master Scott your cousin, and Mistress Frigbottom by Doctor's Commons, do all by my truth send you most hearty commendations. So of course Rose is not interested in their greetings. Did Lacy send kind greetings to his love? Oh yes, out of cry. Out of cry means beyond measure. By my truth I scant knew him. Here he wore a scarf, and here a scarf, and here a bunch of feathers, and here precious stones and jewels, and a pair of garters. Oh monstrous, like one of our yellow silk curtains at home here in Old Ford House, here in Master Bellymount's chamber. Sybil describes Roland Lacy in a very funny way. She mentions all the different items of dress that apparently Roland was sporting, and this is also kind of a list of various luxury items like scarves, feathers, precious stones and jewels, and so on. And Roland looked so gorgeous in these different items, wearing these items, that Sybil says that he was like the silk curtain, which was very gorgeous in Old Ford House. I stood at our door in Cornhill, looked at him, he at me indeed, spake to him, but he not to me, not a word. Marry Gup, thought I, with Wanian. He passed by me as proud. Marry foe, are you grown humorous, thought I, and so shut the door, and in I came. So Sybil speaks very disparagingly of Roland, deliberately, because she wants to provoke Rose. So she says that he looked very proud and arrogant and did not speak to me. Marry Gup, it is an expletive, marry from Mary, and Gup means go up. So it is like expression of derision, like for heaven's sake. And she does not want to speak to him because she feels humiliated, and she says that I thought I with a Wanian. With a Wanian means bad luck to you. So she kind of curses him. And are you grown humorous means are you grown moody. It is when people want not to speak to somebody, then they would see through them, look through them, and would appear moody. So Sybil did not speak to him either. O Sybil, how does thou my Lacy wrong? My Roland is as gentle as a lamb, no dove was ever half so mild as he. So Rose protests that Roland is not at all the kind of arrogant, proud person as Sybil was describing, but he is a very mild and gentle person. Mild, yeah, as a bushel of stamped crabs. So Sybil says that he is as mild as a heap of stamped crabs. Stamped means crushed. Crabs, crab apples. So crab apples are proverbially very sour. So he is as mild as a lot of sour crab apples. He looked upon me as sour as verjuice. Verjuice is the sour juice of unripe fruits. Go thy ways, thought I, thou mayst be much in my gaskins, but nothing in my nether stocks. So this is another colloquial proverb, much in my gaskins, but nothing in my nether stocks. This means that though I will be polite to you socially, I will not take you into my private confidence. He thinks scorn to do, this is your fault, mistress, to love him that loves not you. So Sybil says that he has become arrogant because you love him who does not love you. He thinks scorn to do as he as he is done to, but if I were as you, I would cry, go by, Hieronimo, go by. So he would be scornful at people, but if I were you, then I would not have admired him or adored him, but I would cry, go by, Hieronimo, go by. So here is an allusion to Thomas Kyd's famous tragedy, the Spanish tragedy, where Hieronimo was a character. I would set mine old debts against my new driblets, and the hare's foot against the goose giblets. For if ever I sigh when sleep I should take, pray God I may lose my maidenhead when I wake. So she is using a number of proverbs. Driblets means petty debts. So set my old debts against my new driblets, that is new petty debts. So I will, I will not care for him. I will manage my things, my resources. Set the hare's foot against the goose giblets, which is another proverb. It means something similar, that is to set one thing against another. For if I ever sigh when I sleep I should take, pray God I may lose my maidenhead when I wake. That is, I should never sigh, or I do not sigh when I go to sleep. That is, I do not pine for any lover. And if I do, then when I wake, then I should get married. Will my love leave me then and go to France? So Rose wants to know whether Lacy is going to France. I know not that, but I am sure I see him stalk before the soldiers. By my troth he is a proper man, but he is proper that proper doth. Let him go sneak up, young mistress. Sybil says that I do not know whether he is going to France or not, but I saw him stalking, that is walking before the soldiers. And he is a proper man, that is, he is dressed properly like a gentleman. But then if somebody dresses like a gentleman, he is not necessarily gentle. So he is proper that proper doth. So one who behaves properly, one who behaves like a gentleman is actually a gentleman. Sneak up means hang. So go let him hang. You should not care for him. Rose is of course not influenced by Sybil's words and says, get thee to London and learn perfectly whether my Lacy go to France or no. Do this and I will give thee for thy pains my cambric apron and my Romish gloves, my purple stockings and a stomacher. Say, wilt thou do this, Sybil, for my sake? So here Rose is trying to bribe Sybil by offering her a number of luxury items, number of dress items. Cambric apron. Now cambric was a very fine white linen from Flanders, so it was expensive and very good quality cloth. Romish gloves, that is Italian leather, was very good. Even today it is very good. So gloves made of Italian leather, purple stockings and a stomacher. Stomacher means a dress item that covers the chest. Sometimes it is studded with jewels and so on. So these are all items of dress which rich women would wear. And Rose is tempting Sybil that she would give her all these things if she goes to London and finds out about Lacy. Will I, quotha, at whose suit? By my truth, yes. Sybil speaks in a very colloquial manner. Quoth means says or said. So he says that will I, it is not a question of will I. She said will I, at whose suit? Why should I? But the answer is of course yes, I will go, because of all these luxury items which are offered me, cambric apron, gloves, a pair of purple stockings, and a stomacher. I will sweat in purple, mistress, for you. That is, I am ready to burn in hell for wearing rich clothes. But if it is for you, I will do that. I will take anything that comes a God's name, or rich, a cambric apron. So the repetition of these items of luxury suggests the emphasis in this play on material things, material goods. Faith then, have at uptails all, I will go jiggy-joggy to London and be here in a trice, young mistress. Uptails all means let us get a move on, let us go. And jiggy-joggy means at high speed. So I will go to London at a high speed and come back very quickly in a trice. Do so, good Sybil, meantime wretched I will sit and sigh for his lost company. So in this scene we see this conversation between Rose and Sybil, from which we learn that Rose wants to know about Lacy. In the next scene we see Roland Lacy, and he takes the disguise of a Dutch shoemaker. And there is this soliloquy of Lacy by which we come to know why he takes this dress. How many shapes have gods and kings devised thereby to compass their desired loves? So this is an allusion to Ovid's Metamorphosis, in which there are a number of stories of transformation, gods and sometimes men changing their shapes in order to pursue their love or lust. It is no shame for Roland Lacy then to clothe his cunning with the gentle craft that thus disguised I may unknown possess the only happy presence of my Rose. So if gods and heroes did it, then it is not a shameful thing for Roland Lacy to take the guise of a shoemaker, if that helps me get access to my love, Rose. For her have I forsook my charge in France, incurred the king's displeasure, and stirred up rough hatred in mine Uncle Lincoln's breast. So because of Rose, I disobeyed the king's command or desire. I did not take the charge in France, and I made my uncle hate me. O love, how powerful art thou that canst change high birth to baseness, and a noble mind to the mean semblance of a shoemaker. So love is so powerful that it can change a man of a noble birth to a base man, that is a man of low birth. So I have changed to a shoemaker from my noble status. But thus it must be, for her cruel father, hating the single union of our souls, has secretly conveyed my Rose from London to bar me of her presence. So I must take this disguise because her father wants to prevent our union, single union, that is a union which would make a couple single, that is join them together. The union of our souls. To avoid that, her father secretly conveyed her, that is sent her away from London, so that I cannot meet her. But I trust fortune, and this disguise will further me once more to view her beauty, gain her sight. So I trust fortune, and I hope that with this disguise I will be able to again see her. Here in Tower Street with Eyre the shoemaker mean a while to work. I mean to work with Simon Eyre the shoemaker at Tower Street for a while. I know the trade, I learned it when I was in Wittenberg. Then cheer thy hoping sprites, be not dismayed. Sprite, spirit. So he cheers himself let me cheer up, and I should not be dismayed, disappointed. Thou canst not want, do fortune what she can, the gentle craft is living for a man. So fortune may be against me at the moment, but whatever fortune does to me, this gentle craft will help me. It is the living for a man. So here we have the reference to the Renaissance belief or use of the image of goddess Fortune. Fortune was proverbially fickle. So whatever fortune might do to me, whether fortune will smile at me or not, I will be able to live with the help of the gentle craft, that is the shoemaker's profession. The next scene, we see Simon Eyre and Marjorie and the other shoemakers, and it is early morning, and Eyre is getting ready to open his factory. Therefore he urges everybody to get to work, and he urges his wife Marjorie to tell the maids to prepare the breakfast for the workers. Where be these boys, these girls, these drabs, these scoundrels? They wallow in the fat brevies of my bounty and lick up the crumbs of my table. So this is how he describes the girls. Drabs means lazy woman. Brevis means meat broth or bread soaked in broth. So they wallow in the fat brevies of my bounty and lick up the crumbs of my table, yet will not rise to see my walks cleansed. So they are provided for, they are taken care of by me, because as the master shoemaker, he would provide food and shelter to his workers and servants. So they get everything from me, but they do not wake up in the morning. Come out, you powder beef queens. What Nan, what Madge mumble crust? Come out, you fat midrib swag belly horse, and sweep me these kennels, that the noisome stench offend not the nose of my neighbors. So I suppose a lot of cleaning is required in leather factory or a tanning factory, and usually there is a lot of smell or stench that comes out where raw leather or raw hide is kept. So Simon wants his servants to clean everything. He uses a number of expressions like powder beef queen, which means salted or pickled beef. Queen means whore or prostitute, that is cheap prostitute. Madge Mumble Crust is a toothless character in Udall's play Ralph Roister Doister. Ralph Roister Doister was the first English comedy written by Udall, who was a headmaster, and it was very popular. So later Simon uses this expression again, Madge Mumble Crust, and then he calls them whores and asks them to come out and clean the place. What for, I say, what hodge, open my shop windows, and so on. So he orders his journeymen, his labourers, to open the window. Then Firk comes, "Oh master, is it you that speak bandog and bedlam this morning?" So is it you who is creating so much noise in the morning? Bandog means dog who is tied up or chained up because of its ferocity. Bedlam was a mental hospital or asylum, which means that Firk compares Simon either to a madman or to a dog who barks violently. Have you drunk this morning that your throat is so clear? Ah, well said, Fark, well said, Fark. To work, my fine knave, to work. Wash thy face, and thou wilt be more blessed. So he wants Fark to wash his face and get back to work. Let them wash my face that will eat it, good master. Send for a Sue's wife if you will have my face cleaner. So a Sue's wife is a woman who washes and pickles pigs. So Fark says that I do not want to wash my face, so early in the morning. So if you want it to be washed, then send a Sue's woman. Then Hodge enters. Away, Sloven, avaunt, scoundrel, good morrow, Hodge, good morrow, my fine foreman. So the first expressions are addressed to Fark. He sends him away and then greets Hodge. Oh master, good morrow, you are an early stirrer, here is a fair morning, good morrow, Fark, I could have slept this hour, here is a brave day towards. So Hodge also kind of complains that it is an early morning and we could have slept a little more. Ire, oh, has to work, my fine foreman, has to work. So we see here this emphasis on work and the fact that Ire wants everybody to get up early in the morning and get to work suggests the high value of work in this period of mercantile capitalism. The middle class, particularly the artisan class, they valued work, which is apparent here. Then Marjorie enters. Fark says, Master, I am dry as dust to hear my fellow Roger talk of fair weather. Let us pray for good leather and let clowns and ploughboys and those that work in the fields pray for brave days. We work in a dry shop. What care I if it rains? So Fark says that peasants and farmers are dependent upon weather, but we work in a covered place, in a factory, and therefore why should we worry about weather? Which suggests the pride of the shoemakers as practicing their craft. They are superior to farmers or peasants who work in the open fields. How now, Dame Marjorie, can you see to rise? Trip and go, call up the drabs, your maids. So he asks his wife to call all the maids. See to rise, I hope 'tis time enough. 'Tis early enough for any woman to be seen abroad. I marvel how many wives in Tower Street are up so soon. So Marjorie also complains that why should I awaken the maids so soon? It is very early for any woman to be on the road. I marvel how many wives, how many women on Tower Street are up so soon. God's me, it is not noon, here is a yawling. So yawling means noisy racket. So you are creating a lot of noise, but it is very early in the morning. Peace, Marjorie, peace. Where is Cicely Boomtrinket, your maid? She has a privy fault, she farts in her sleep. Call the queen up. If my want shoe thread, I will swing her in a stirrup. So call up this maid. Simon calls her by the name Cicely Boomtrinket, which he uses later also. So Simon uses very strange expressions, words, which express his working class character and the vulgarity in his language, the way he speaks about women. All those express his lowly nature. So here he says that if that maid does not supply shoe thread to all the workers, then I will beat her up. Yeah, yet that is but a dry beating. Here is still a sign of drought. So Fark constantly alludes to drought because he wants to drink, and all the workers most of them, they always want to drink and kind of celebrate whenever there is any opportunity. And we will see that later when Hans comes to join them and finds an employment with Simon, then Hans pays for their drink, and all of them drink and celebrate. Then Lacy enters disguised as Hans, singing in a language which is like Dutch, but it is not Dutch, it is a kind of mixture of Dutch and English. Der was ein Boer van Gelderland, frolic sie bien. He was als dronk as he could not stand, absols sie bien. Tap ins die kanneken, drink schon manneken. So a number of Dutch words or words with Dutch derivations are used here. The meaning is given in the footnote. There was a Boer from Gelderland, Mary de Bie. Now the word Boer in Dutch meant a farmer. Boer meant in Dutch a farmer. In English it was adopted as Boer, and from this the adjective boorish, which meant coarse, unsophisticated. So we see that in the 16th century already the word Boer had the pejorative sense that we have in later English as boorish, in the word boorish. There was a Boer from Gelderland, Mary de Bie. He was so drunk he could not stand, pissed they all be. Clink once the cannikin, drink pretty mannequin. So clink your cans and drink. Mannequin is a diminutive of man and cannikin is a diminutive of can. Master, for my life yonder is a brother of the gentle craft. If he bear not Saint-Hugh's bones, I'll forfeit my bones. He is some uplandish workman. Hire him, good master, that I may learn some gibble-gabble. It will make us work the faster. Firk says that there is a brother of the gentle craft, that is a shoemaker, and he surely bears Saint-Hugh's bones. Now Saint-Hugh was the patron saint of the shoemakers, and the large metal angular instrument which shoemakers carry, on which they place the shoes and then repair them or hammer them, that was called Saint-Hugh's bones. So that tool, important for the shoemakers, indispensable, was called Saint-Hugh's bones. So Firk says that this man is a shoemaker, he must be carrying this tool, Saint-Hugh's bones, and he is an uplandish workman. But this is a kind of joke because a Dutch comes from the Netherlands, not upland. That is, the Netherlands, the lands are below the sea level. So they are very low lands. That is why they are called the Netherlands. So he is a workman, from a Dutch workman. So you hire him so that I can learn some gibble-gabble, that is language which is unintelligible, and that will make us work faster because it will create a lot of fun. Peace Firk, a hard word, let him pass, let him vanish. We have journeymen enough. So Ayer frequently uses this expression, let it pass and let it vanish, as we saw that for Marjorie, let it pass is a habit of saying, and Simon often says let him vanish. So he here says that it is a hard work, that is, we are not so rich as to spend a lot of money by hiring another workman. So we must make do with whatever we have. Whereas the other workers, they are very eager that another workman is employed, so that either they will be able to share the work and they will have to work less, or they will pass their work on the new worker, whatever, or just because there will be a lot of fun having another worker with them. Nay, nay, you are best follow your man's counsel, you shall see what will come on it. We have not men enough, but we must entertain every butter box, but let that pass. So Marjorie says that that it is not proper at this moment to hire another person. We cannot entertain every butter box. That is, the Dutch were called butter box, meaning that they were great gluttons. They would eat a lot. Dame, before God, if my master follow your counsel, he will consume little beef. So Hodge says that if Simon follows your counsel and does not employ another man, then he will eat little beef. That is, he will not be able to generate a lot of income. So hiring another man also means that the income of the farm will increase. He shall be glad of men and he can catch them. And means if. So he should be glad if he can catch a worker. Then Hodge says, before God, a proper man, and I warrant a fine workman. Master, farewell, dame, adieu. If such a man as he cannot find work, Hodge is not for you. So now they start blackmailing by saying that if you do not employ him, then we are not going to work for you either. So Hodge says that I will not work if you do not employ him. And Fark says, faith and your foreman go, dame, you must take a journey to seek a new journeyman. So Hodge was the foreman. So if the foreman goes away, then I am the journeyman. I will also quit. So you will have to undertake a new journey to find another journeyman. If Roger remove, Fark follows. If St. Hugh's bones shall not be set of work, I may prick mine all in the walls and go play. Fare you well, master, goodbye, dame. So he says that I will also quit, and they kind of want to force Simon Eyre to hire the man. But Eyre cannot afford to lose Hodge, because Hodge is an experienced working man, because he is the foreman. So he says, tarry my fine Hodge, my brisk foreman. Tarry means wait. So you please wait. Stay for peace, pudding broth. By the Lord of Ludgate, I love my men as my life. Peace, you Gallimaufry. Hodge, if you want work, I will hire him. Gallimaufry means a hot pot of various meats, which means that a hodgepodge or a contemptuous expression. So he tells them that I am ready to hire. Lacey, Guten Tag, Mr. Ende you fro walk. Guten Tag is the expression Guten Tag in German, means good day, and here with a Dutch accent. So basically Lacey says, good day, master, and you, mistress, too. But Fark imitates him and jokes on the word oak. Nails, if I should speak after him without drinking, I should choke. And you, friend Oak, are you of the gentle craft? So he asks him whether he is a shoemaker. And Lacey says with a Dutch accent, yo, ich bin den Schuhmacher, Skomacher. Yes, I am a shoemaker. And of course, this gives rise to a lot of humor, because he says, yo, like the Dutch. And Fox says, ha, good master, hire him. He will make me laugh so that I shall work more in mirth then I can in earnest. So it will be a lot of fun if this dustman is employed, and we will be able to work more. Here you friend, have you any skill in the mystery of cordwainers? Now Simon uses the more formal description of a shoemaker, that is cordwainer. The word cordwainer is derived from Cordovan leather. So he basically asks, are you a shoemaker? Ich war nicht what you said, ich verstehe you nicht. I don't know what you are saying, I do not understand you. Why this man, ich verstehe you nicht, Kotha. So Falk does not understand the expressions of Lacy, so he just repeats them. Ja, ich kann dann well tun. Means yes, I can do that well. Which means that they do not understand one another. Fuck. He speaks yawing like a jackdaw that gapes to be fed with cheese curds. A jackdaw is a crow. So he is yawning like a crow who wants to eat cheese curd. Oh, he will give a villainous pull at a can of double beer. But Hodge and I have the vantage, we must drink first, because we are the eldest journeymen. So Falk says that we will, even though this Dutchman will pull a beer can very fast, because he seems to be a great drinker, but we will drink before him, because hierarchically we are senior. So even among the workers, among the shoemakers, there is a hierarchy, and the seniors would drink first. Ayer, what is thy name? Hans Muelter. Give me thy hand, thou art welcome. Hodge entertain him. Falk bid him welcome. Come Hans, run, wife, bid your maids, your truly bubs, make ready my fine man's breakfast. To him Hodge. So Simon employs him and tells the workers to begin their work, and tells his wife to call the maids. Truly Bob is a coinage by Simon. It is a combination of the word Trillibob, which means entrails or tribes, and Trull, which means a whore. So basically he says that call the entrail eater whores or your maids, and tell them to prepare the breakfast for the workers. Hans, thou art welcome, use thyself friendly, for we are good fellows. If not, thou shalt be fought with. Wert thou bigger than a giant? So he welcomes Hans and says that you should be friends with us, but if you have any hostility, then we will fight against you. In other words, he accepts him in their company. Yeah, and drunk with wert thou Gargantua. My master keeps no cowards, I tell thee. Gargantua is a character from the French Renaissance French novelist Rabelais. So Falk means that even if you are a giant like Gargantua and drunk, even then we will fight you, because we are not cowards. Oh boy, bring him an hill block. Here is a new journeyman. So they accept him as their colleague. Oh, ich verstehe you. That is, oh yes, I understand you. Ich must in half dozen cans betalen. Here boy, nehmt this killing, tap ins freilich. So Lacy says that yes, I understand you. I must buy a half dozen cans. Here boy, take this shilling and fill us up freely. Which means that he is providing drink to all the workers. Ayer, quick snapper, away. Falk, scout thy throat, thou shalt wash it with Castilian liquor. Come, my last of the fives. Snipper snapper means a young insignificant fellow. Probably this is addressed to the boy, and he tells Fark that you will drink very good liquor. Castilian means Spanish liquor. And last of the fives, last means a wooden shoe, and 5 is the size 5, which is the smallest size. I suppose Iyer describes or addresses the boy by saying my last of the fives, because he is the smallest man there. Give me a can, have to thee, Hans here, Hodge here, Fark drink, you mad Greeks, and work like true Trojans, and pray for Simon Iyer the shoemaker. Here Hans, and thou art welcome. So they all drink, and Simon calls his workers by strange names like Greeks, mad Greeks, or true Trojans. So he has a cheerful spirit, and he uses a lively language, and he is often coining words, new expressions. And he also calls himself the mad shoemaker on Tower Street. Lo, dame, you would have lost a good fellow that will teach us to laugh. This beer came hopping in well. Fark says this to Marjorie. Simon, it's almost 7. Is it so, Dame Clapperdozen? It is 7 o'clock and my men's breakfast not ready. Trip and go, you soused conqueror, anyway. Come, you mad Hyperboreans, follow me, Hodge, follow me, Hans. Come after my fine fur to work a while, and then to breakfast. Simon calls Marjorie Dame Clapperdozen, an allusion to beggars who used to carry a dish or a clap dish that would make a noise, a clapping noise. So they would beg by clapping their dish. And he calls his workers mad Hyperboreans. So Hyperborean means extreme north, and encourages everyone to start working, and after some work they will have their breakfast. And Fark says, though my master have no more wit but to call you afore me, I am not so foolish to go behind you, I being the elder journeyman. So he says that even though Simon called Hans before him, but he being senior, he will go first and Hans will go later. Right. Okay. So we will stop here today. Let me know if you have any questions.
Hyperborean means?
Hyperborean means those who live in the extreme north. So the sense of the expression is, Simon always gives outlandish names to his workers, like Greek, Trojan, Hyperborean. These are all outlandish. That is his way of praising or encouraging his workers. Yes. Any
Sir,
other?
Sir, I want to know something to you.
Yeah.
So here, Sibyl says, he thinks gone to do as he is done to, but if I were as you, I did cry, go by, hieromono go by. So why is hieromono is used here?
Yes, as I told you that Hieronimo was a character in Keats' The Spanish Tragedy, and there Hieronimo would take revenge of the murder of his son, and in order to take revenge he pretended to be mad, and therefore this mad, or a character who pretended to be mad but who would ultimately take revenge on the murder of his son, became a kind of character who was engraved in the minds of the people in popular imagination, and therefore Hieronimo go by became a catchphrase. I do not think that there is any deeper meaning here, but Sybil uses this popular expression to suggest that if he were in place of Rose, then he would not have fallen for Lacy. So she would have probably the temperament of Hieronimo, perhaps a vengeful temperament, but it cannot be actually interpreted. I suppose that it can be interpreted in various ways, or it may not be interpreted, because the expression is just casually uttered by Sybil, and Sybil is a maid, therefore her expressions do not carry that much of gravity, and besides, this expression is a popular expression, and Spanish tragedy became a popular play, and therefore just like sometimes we quote dialogues from Bollywood movies, similarly the Elizabethan people, ordinary people, they would quote from plays.